Skal vi tage den på dansk eller på engelsk?
Dansk.
På engelsk?
Yes, please.
English? You sure?
Oh, Polish.
Polish? Okay, so Polish is leading. Any other languages that we should consider? Ungarsk, Hungarian. Okay. So, but seriously, is there a lot of people from other countries? Would you prefer it in English or Danish?
Danish.
English?
Danish.
Skal vi tage den lidt på, vi tager den på dansk engelsk? We'll do half and half?
Ja, ja.
Hvad andet ord på hvad andet sprog?
English.
English. Okay, we'll come back in 5 minutes. You guys battle it out. I'm fine to do it in English, but whatever you prefer. I feel bad if people have traveled from.
Jeg bor her.
You bor here? Okay. Okay, vi går lidt frem og tilbage, but maybe in English, start.
Yeah, we start in English.
Okay.
Yeah, unless someone doesn't understand English.
Yeah, we could also do an hour in each. We'll figure it out. Good point.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And Lars, you came to Denmark 3 days ago.
I did.
And I think what we're going to talk a little bit about today is what home is, what identity is when you live abroad. So I'm actually curious to know, when you landed in Denmark, did you feel that you came home?
How is everybody today? Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess if you go by language, home somehow insinuates a singular, that there's one home. So I guess for me, I feel like I have many homes, and Denmark is certainly, obviously, among those, maybe the primary. I don't know. Home is, you've heard all the cliches. Home is where the heart is. All that nonsense. But it's definitely coming home. Coming to Denmark is a sense of homecoming, but it's not sort of predisposing that it's the only home in that sense. But I think also as I get older, I feel maybe more like I'm returning to where I come from. But it's Danes. I say this everywhere I go. Danish people are very tribal, very proud of where they come from, very traditional, and I like to bring that way of thinking out into the world. I would like to remind people that I'm Danish. I am just a Danish citizen. I don't have citizenship anywhere else. I proudly wave my Danish passport wherever I go, and so coming back to Denmark, in that case, very much feels like a homecoming, which then again, so does going to San Francisco, which is really my primary home outside of Denmark. But there's always a joy of coming here, and a sense of excitement, and a sense of, coming to Denmark is always very relaxing and rejuvenating. A little bit like we talked, Pooh came from Lebanon last night, and I presume everybody here knows what Pooh does for her day job, other than sitting up here with me. And so you came from Lebanon yesterday, and I can only imagine what it feels like for you to come back here.
Yeah, I think first of all, another calmness.
Yeah.
Indeed, not the sound of war, but it's also, I don't have a home here, in the sense that there's not a place that I call my home except my childhood home, which is then where I'm anchored and where my mom and dad lives, and where I grew up, and that is certainly home. But I'm always also hit by the feeling of also being a stranger, because having lived abroad for so many years makes me look in at Denmark in a different way than when you live here. So I think the feeling of homecoming is also often related to what I eat actually, to the food. Nothing better than a leverpostejsmad with mayonnaise. If you haven't tried it, Don't say oh. Try it.
Just wrapping my head around that. Okay. When I think of mayonnaise, I think of reisalat, shrimp, just swimming in mayonnaise, just engulfed.
I'm not talking about liver potatoes swimming in mayonnaise. I'm just talking about a thin layer. Yeah, so it's also related to food, to stuff I can't get where I live in the Middle East. So there's like a sweetness to that, to come home. But I don't necessarily feel at home in Copenhagen, for example, because I haven't lived here that many years ago. And it's also a sense of looking at the place I come from as an outsider. I mean, I think it's a gift. I think it's very interesting. I wonder, what is it that makes you feel that it's...
Well, I just wanted, you brought up a lot of things that triggered stuff in my mind. I mean, first of all, when you say the word outsider, I mean, I've always felt like an outsider, even when I was living here. I'm an only child, and some of you may have heard this stuff before, but wanting to be in a rock and roll band, wanting to be in a group, wanting to be in a gang, wanting to belong to a collective in that sense, I think comes from being an only child. It comes from being an outsider, or feeling like an outsider, feeling maybe never really quite belonging in that sense. And I've carried that with me all my life. And then looking at my wife Jess, who's sitting down there. Hi, baby. So we talk a lot about. So we live in San Francisco, and when we come home to San Francisco, our greatest joy is coming home to the home environment, which circles back to what you were talking about not having a home in Denmark in that sense. So you come home, but you're still kind of a stranger, or you're visiting, or you're not rooting in that sense. And so I think that the greatest joy of coming to San Francisco for us is actually coming to home, coming to the space that we call home, and knowing that, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, we use the word dialed. Things are dialed, the way we want them, our surroundings are dialed, so it feels very homey in that sense. We can relax there, but it is certainly the juxtaposition between the sort of the moving around, the nomadic lifestyles, and all that. And I think, when I come home, and again, I've told this story a few times before, but in 8th grade, we went to gik til præst, hed det. I 8. klasse gik til præst. It was religious studies in 8th grade, preparing for, in that year where you be a confirmed. And so in Messiaskirken, ude i Hellerup, ved HK's baner derude på Hartmannsvej. That's where I went to Maglø and so we gik til præst in Messiaskirken. We really are going back and forth between the two languages. Anyway, so we're sitting there. There was, I can remember, like, it was literally yesterday, 3 hours every Thursday from 8 to Spisfrikvarteret. Yeah, seriously, it was a Thursday fra kl. 8 til 11:35, hvor der var Spisfrikvarteret, det store frikvarter. Anyway, so we're going to this priest, and they go around the room early, maybe a month or two into the studies, and they took everybody in Otten C. And they said, where do you see yourself in 20 years? Where do you see yourself when you're an adult? how do you envision yourself, your older self?
What an evil question.
Yeah, and so when it came to me, I said, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I know that I'll be moving around a lot. I know that I'm not going to be sitting behind a desk. I know I'm not going to be stationary and in one place. And I think it's safe to say that 50 years later, I've lived up to that. And so that sort of circles back to, again, what we started 10 minutes ago about the idea of home, because again, you can attribute a lot of cliches to it, but home can be just moving. There can be a sense of, especially in our Metallica bubble, it feels very homey, feels very safe, even though it's constantly moving. We have the same people around us, and we have the same schedules and it's sort of what's the right word? Daily sort of routines and continuity, and that feels also quite homey in a way. And then when you step out of that bubble at the end of a tour, we just ended our 24 tour 3 weeks ago in Mexico City. So you come home, and even though you come home to something that's dialed in your own surroundings, you still feel a sense of, now you have to decompress for a few weeks, and now you have to find your footing in that sense. So I think the long-winded answer, and most of them, as who know me, know they are long-winded answers, is that it's many different things. But certainly, landing in Kastrup and coming back here always feels like maybe the English word would be more a sense of homecoming. And I love coming back here, and a little bit like you talk about, whether it's Remoulade or Piratos or all these crazy rested hot dogs and all the crazy stuff. But there has been times, and I think it's fair to say, and I've said this publicly also, even in the Danish press, that there are times where Denmark can feel, because it's so small and we all feel like we know each other, which is a good thing, but also it can feel, it's small and we all know each other, and sometimes you need a little bit of elbow room, or you need a little bit of a sense of privacy or whatever. I used to always feel like when I would go out with my dad to restaurants or whatever, it was like he knew every single person in Denmark. There's 5 million people in Denmark. My dad knew every one of them. And we would walk into a restaurant and go, hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Hey, Uncle Neil. Hey, you're for Hoiko, and you're, and before we sat down to eat, it would be like one fucking hour of my dad walking around just saying hello to everybody in the restaurant. And that's not just a comment on fame in that sense of being well known, but that's a comment on a Danish way of, we all feel like we're all the same, and we're all equal in that sense, and we all are tribally related. And that's, some of the stuff I tell people around the world is like, Denmark, everybody sort of just feels like you know each other, and that's most of the time a really great thing, but can also, if you're working hard, or if you're doing, or if your mind is going through different things, can be taxing. Let's not bullshit each other. So it's both of it, and you said it yourself earlier. Sometimes Denmark can feel claustrophobic, and so it's all of that, and I think it's okay that it's all of that. But certainly, as I get older, I feel, and I could see this in my dad also, a more sense of homecoming, and more returning, like boomeranging back to where you came from, and you appreciate it more and more in that sense.
I think it's interesting how Denmark presents itself when you land at the airport.